Hey, everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and let's dive into some wild history. Today, we're talking about one of the boldest, most audacious scams in human history. A con so outrageous it's almost hard to believe it happened. We're going back to 1920s Paris, where one man, Victor Lustig, had the nerve to try and sell the Eiffel Tower. Not once, but twice. This is the story of how a charming con man almost pulled off the impossible. Let's get into it. To understand this scam, we first need to meet the mastermind behind it. Victor Lustig, a man who could talk his way out of anything, or into anything. Born in 1890 in what's now the Czech Republic, Lustig was a natural-born hustler. By his early 20s, he was already a seasoned con artist, fluent in multiple languages, with a knack for reading people like an open book. This guy wasn't your average petty thief. He was a high-class swindler who dressed sharp, spoke smooth, and always had a plan. Lustig spent years pulling off scams across Europe and the United States, from fake money-making machines to elaborate cons on transatlantic cruise ships. But in 1925, he set his sights on something bigger, way bigger. He wanted to scam the city of Paris. And his target? The most iconic landmark in the world, the Eiffel Tower. Now, you might be thinking, how do you even sell a giant monument like the Eiffel Tower? Great question. To pull this off, Lustig needed the perfect setup, and 1925 Paris gave him just that. The Eiffel Tower, built in 1889 for the World's Fair, was a global symbol of French pride, but it wasn't without its critics. By the 1920s, some Parisians saw it as an eyesore, a temporary structure that had overstayed its welcome. Plus, maintaining it was expensive, painting, repairs, you name it. There were whispers in the press about what to do with it, and Lustig, always on the lookout for an opportunity, saw his chance. He read a newspaper article about the tower's maintenance costs and the debates over its future. That's when the light bulb went off. If people thought the Eiffel Tower might be dismantled or sold for scrap, why not convince them he was the guy to make it happen? It was a crazy idea, but Lustig wasn't just any con man. He was the king of confidence. So, here's how it went down. In May 1925, Lustig rolled into Paris posing as a high-ranking government official. He had forged documents, fake letterheads from the French Ministry of Posts and Telegraphs, and a persona so polished you'd think he was born in a suit. He targeted 6 wealthy, scrap metal dealers, guys who had the cash and the connections to buy into a big deal. Lustig invited them to a secret meeting at a fancy hotel, the kind of place where big business happens. At the meeting, he spun a wild story. He told them the French government had decided the Eiffel Tower was too costly to maintain and was going to be torn down. The plan? Sell it for scrap metal to the highest bidder. But, he warned, this was a sensitive matter. The public loved the Eiffel Tower, so the deal had to stay hush-hush to avoid an uproar. The dealers bought it hook, line, and sinker. Why? Because Lustig was that good. His forged documents looked legit, his story made sense given the press, and his charm sealed the deal. Among the dealers, one guy stood out, André Poisson, a scrap metal magnate who was hungry to make a name for himself. Poisson saw this as his big break, a chance to land a historic deal and cement his legacy. Lustig zeroed in on him. Knowing Poisson's ambition made him the perfect mark. After some back and forth, Lustig chose Poisson as the winning bidder, offering him the Eiffel Tower scrap metal for a cool $70,000, about $1.2 million in today's money. But here's where Lustig's genius really shined. He didn't just ask for the money outright. He hinted that, as a government official, he was a bit underpaid and might need a little extra to smooth things over. In other words, he asked for a bribe. This wasn't just greed, it was a calculated move. The bribe made Poisson feel like he was in on something exclusive, a secret deal with a powerful insider. Poisson paid up, handing over the cash for the tower and the bribe. Now, you'd think Poisson would figure out pretty quick that he'd been duped, right? Well, here's the crazy part. He didn't. When Poisson realized the deal was fake, he was too embarrassed to report it. Who wants to admit they fell for a scam that big? Lustig, sensing he'd gotten away clean, did something even bolder. A month later, he went back to Paris, rounded up a new group of scrap metal dealers, and ran the exact same scam again. Same forged documents, same secret meeting, same story about the Eiffel Tower being sold for scrap. He almost pulled it off a second time, but one of the dealers got suspicious and tipped off the police. Lustig, always one step ahead, caught wind of the investigation and hightailed it out of France before the cops could catch him. He fled to the United States, where he continued his conman career, pulling off scams until he was finally arrested in 1935 for counterfeiting. But the Eiffel Tower scam? He got away with it scot-free. So what made this scam so brilliant? First, Lustig's confidence was unmatched. He didn't just sell a lie, he sold a dream. To Poisson, this wasn't just about scrap metal. It was about being part of history. Second, Lustig exploited the context perfectly. The Eiffel Tower's maintenance issues were real, and the idea of it being torn down wasn't that far-fetched in 1925. Third, his use of secrecy was genius. By telling his marks to keep quiet, he ensured they wouldn't double-check his story or blab to the wrong people. And let's not forget the psychology. Lustig knew that greed and ego could blind even the savviest businessmen. Poisson didn't just want the deal. He wanted to be the guy who got the deal. That's what Lustig preyed on, and it's why the scam worked so well. Victor Lustig's Eiffel Tower scam didn't just make him rich, it made him a legend. He's remembered as one of the greatest con artists of all time, a guy who turned audacity into an art form. The scam didn't destroy lives like some of the bigger frauds we've talked about on this channel, but it's iconic for its sheer boldness. The Eiffel Tower is still standing, of course, and today it's hard to imagine anyone thinking it could be sold for scrap. But in 1925, Lustig made it believable. Lustig himself? He kept scamming until he was caught for a different crime. He spent his final years in Alcatraz, where he died in 1947. But his legacy lives on. Every time someone mentions a con man, Victor Lustig's name is right up there. This story is a classic reminder. If something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Lustig's scam worked because he was a master at exploiting trust, greed, and the desire to be part of something big. Whether it's a shady investment, a sketchy business deal, or someone claiming they could sell you a national monument, always do your homework. Check the documents, ask the hard questions, and don't let charm cloud your judgment. If you love this deep dive into one of the craziest scams in history, let me know in the comments. Drop a part 2 if you want more stories about wild cons and frauds. Trust me, there's no shortage of them. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, hit that subscribe button, and check out this video on screen about another insane historical scam. We've got tons of content on the channel for you history buffs out there. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay sharp and don't get scammed.